John Scott, Jonathan Acosta here at Bills Rookie Minicamp. Day one, they're going to go through the entire weekend. This is our only opportunity, though, to see them out on the practice field. Let's just start generally. What popped out to you?
Well, I was really focused on the defensive line, and generally the guys up front are pretty big guys, but these guys in the Bills draft class are especially large human beings. TJ Sanders, the second-round pick, and then you look at Landon Jackson, the third-round pick. He's even taller than him, and then Deon Walker is just as tall as Landon Jackson and bigger than Jackson and Sanders, so immediately the size is something that pops out. I think it gives you sort of the extra lens into maybe Brandon Beane's thought process in the draft about how this team needed to add more beef up front for when they take on Kansas City, or you're following the Philadelphia Eagles playbook of really getting guys who can make a difference up on that defensive line. I think just from a sheer size standpoint, those three guys give you the idea that, hey, they can come into the NFL and make some sort of impact as rookies. Obviously, with the drills they go through, you can't glean too much or what their specific roles are going to be, but sort of the traits, the measurables, are one of the things that sticks out to you when you first see them in person, and that's something that stood out to me from those three guys up front.
And Deon Walker, as Brandon Beane said after he was selected, isn't going to really do a whole heck of a lot maybe during this entire spring portion, was not doing a lot today, but catching up with him after practice, it's a lot of the mental reps. It's a lot of the mental reps, and that's a huge thing for guys coming into the league. They've been training for the combine. They've been training for pro days. It's been nonstop since their season ended. Now you're trying to digest what all but certainly is a more complex and bigger defensive playbook. And now Walker's sitting there saying, okay, I'm watching it. I'm talking to guys. I'm with the coaches. It's not as maybe big of a setback for him at this point as maybe it would be when we've seen rookies suffer injuries in training camp.
And I think something that's beneficial, something that both Landon Jackson and TJ Sanders talked about, is all three of them come from the SEC. And obviously there's a lot of good non-SEC college football programs, but the SEC is by and large considered the best football conference in college football. And there's a different level of preparation, a different level of athlete that they face in college, a different level of competition. So when you have all three guys sort of coming from, they were all playing against similar players, similar teams. They come here. Even TJ Sanders, something that sort of surprised me is he was asked, how different is the playbook? And he said, honestly, it's not very different. It's the verbiage is a little bit different, but the playbook in and of itself and what they have to grasp in terms of adding more plays is not that much different. I think that just speaks to the level of preparation that they've already had at the college level, maybe making them more likely to be able to produce right away here in their first year here in Buffalo.
My focus was on the defensive backs, and obviously the first overall pick by the Bills, 30th overall, Max Hairston. You're not going to see, I don't think, the speed in this type of setting right now, but I will say a little interesting teaching moment from the jump. Both Bobby Babich as well as other coaches letting it be known to not just Hairston, but other defensive backs, we go full speed, first drill, out the gate. And I'm not saying guys were dogging it. It's not some alarmist type of an observation, but that's part of what this whole setting is here at Rookie Minicamp. And then Hairston and everyone picking it up a notch, catching the ball really well, even getting out of his breaks in these drill works. That's where you see the change of direction. Mm-hmm. That's the impressive sort of things. But again, it's this weird dynamic of it's our first look, but you have to kind of temper and understand how you need to adjust your sights for what you're seeing.
Well, and especially when his big trait is speed, right? We talked about the size of the defensive lineman. That's something that sticks out right away. In terms of speed, though, you said it, that's something that maybe won't stick out until we see some 7-on-7, 11-on-11 work where he makes a break on a route, jumps the route, gets the interception, then he's taking it back the other way. That's where we'll really get a good idea of just what kind of speed he's bringing and how different it is from the rest of the defensive back room. You want to see some leadership out of your high-round picks, your first, your second-round picks. And after the practice portion had already wrapped up, he was still out there getting some work in with Dorian Strong. Now, an interesting connection between the two, and we talked with Strong afterwards about it, is that they were both training together as part of a bigger group out in Phoenix, Arizona. And so when Strong was drafted, he already knew Hairston was going to be here. So once he was drafted, they got on a phone call together and just talked about how excited they both were to be here together. It's nice when a player like Strong or a player like Hairston have other guys that they're familiar with here to sort of make the process easier, because it can be difficult. It's for most of them their first time here in Buffalo, their first time getting professional coaching. So to have that little aspect make it somewhat easier is nice for them to have. And obviously Strong was very excited talking about that connection.
The Kentucky connection is also strong here.
Yes.
And Deion Walker telling me Hairston is already staying with Ray Davis a little bit in his house. And he says, at some point, once we get out of the hotel, maybe I'll head on over and snake over a bed myself as well. So it's good that some of the younger players, the draft picks, already have some insulated guys to lean on here. Other guys in the secondary here, Jordan Hancock, the Ohio State kind of jack of all trades, said, hey, I'm looking at everything. I'm doing whatever they asked of me. And that could be challenging, though, for a young player trying to learn multiple spots. That's always kind of the dynamic of it's best for your roster stability to be able to do a lot, but is it the easiest thing for development out the gate?
And it's something that the Bills already have sort of a jack of all trades in Cam Lewis, right? So is that something where once he gets around him and OTAs and training camp and stuff like that, a player with very specific knowledge to what he's trying to do, or we think he's trying to do, to be able to guide him through that? And you watched him obviously a lot at Ohio State. I'm sure you have a better idea of like what he's able to bring to this team and how quickly he's able to bring it and to what extent, especially in that jack of all trades role.
Once he was drafted, I went back and watched him because I said once he was picked, I mean, Ohio State has so much talent that some of the good players can get lost in the sauce with some of the, like Caleb Downs, who's going to be a top 10 pick in next year's draft in that secondary as well. I found that he really has a nose for the football. He seemed to be in the mix for turnovers. Obviously, I'm not watching every single play he does. You're seeing more of a highlight type reel between forcing fumbles, getting his nose on the football, and some interceptions. He had like a 93-yard interception return for a touchdown a year or two ago for Ohio State. So that's the type of things. It'll be interesting to see his development and his placement as we move along. Let's go to the offensive side.
One more note on that, actually, though, is something that is beneficial for both Hancock and Hairston and Strong. I asked Strong how excited he was to come to a place with sort of a track record of developing defensive backs. And he talked about how he's watched Christian Benford. He follows Christian Benford on Instagram and everything. And he has noticed the way Benford has developed here in his time in Buffalo. So he's excited to be here in this place, in this program, again, under a head coach like Sean McDermott, a defensive coordinator like Bobby Babich, who have a proven track record of bringing in guys who maybe aren't top 10 picks, top 15 picks, but you get them in here at One Bills Drive, and they develop into very quality starters, all-pro caliber guys like Taron Johnson, or nearly all-pro caliber guys like Christian Benford.
Benford was a bit of is he a corner, is he a nickel, is he a safety when he was coming out of Villanova? Yeah, we'll maybe see if Dorian Strong could be someone like that. We didn't really talk much about offense after the draft. I didn't expect to talk much about offense after rookie minicamp, especially about this guy, Jackson Hawes, because the number one thing you hear about him after getting selected by the Bills is blocking. An elite blocker as a tight end that seems to fit the role that the way with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, perfect. The Bills lose Quentin Morris. This is the guy that they need. He was catching literally every pass I ever looked up and saw during the team portion today.
And you said it's especially significant because if he was brought in here as, hey, like a receiving tight end, you expect to see him out there and be a receiving tight end, but he's brought in to be that blocking tight end. We expect him to fill that role of a Quentin Morris, who caught maybe 1 or 2 passes a year, who actually had some big touchdown catches in his time here. But you know what I mean, like very limited amount of opportunities in the receiving game in here for really special teams and blocking. But it certainly doesn't hurt if he can bring that receiving element as a third tight end. So that's something, one of those things that you make a mental note of it, and you look to see how that develops as the offseason progresses once he gets around Mitch Trubisky and Josh Allen going up against a proper defense to see what he does. But obviously, I agree with you. One of the more intriguing things I think that we saw here in this rookie minicamp.
And the Bills, maybe I actually believe more than any team in all of football, brought in the eligible 6th offensive lineman. It was often Alec Anderson. And it's all fun of like, maybe that guy will get a pass here and there. We've seen Bills offensive linemen. But the doors that it opens for Joe Brady from a play-calling perspective, if you can bring in Jackson Hawes as the 6th offensive lineman, an extra blocker, and he can actually contribute in the passing game and be a threat that the defense has to rely upon and focus on, that could be a really just extra little notch in the belt for Brady to use.
And we talked about it a little bit with Jordan Hancock about how is there more there that we haven't necessarily seen. Could the same thing be the case with Jackson Hawes, right? Because he played most of his collegiate career at Yale, plays at Georgia Tech for 1 year, a different level of play there. Now he's into the NFL. But part of drafting is finding guys like that where you say, hey, we know he did this in college, but we think he's capable of doing this in the NFL, right? So is that something where Brandon Beane in this front office saw what he was able to do in college, saw his body type, saw the opportunities that he did get in the receiving game and saying, hey, we're not bringing him here to replace Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox as our main receiving tight ends, but he has this ability and we can find a way to sort of harness that and have him be more productive at this level than maybe what the round he was taken in or what his college tape would show.
We will talk about a receiver as much as the man who's kind of at the top of this building doesn't really want us to. Caden Prather, I thought, made some nice plays in the team setting here. I wasn't focusing during the individual portion. Just an interesting guy, a big body type receiver that I want to just not just dismiss him, even though Jackson Hawes, the blocking tight end, was the star of the offensive show. We'll wrap things up with this. Moving forward, we're not going to see anything until the end of the month, OTAs. I'm going to put you on the spot because I didn't tell you this. When we get back to Orchard Park at the end of May, what's going to be the number one thing you're going to have your eyes on?
I want to see two things. We'll start with the first round pick, Max Hairston, because there are two veterans here also contending for that second cornerback spot in Tre'Davious White and Dane Jackson, right? So do we start to get any sort of a lens into how this team views Hairston as maybe the favorite for that second cornerback spot, how he's working with them, maybe like on-field coaching and stuff like that? And then I want to see how far Deon Walker is along in his progression, right? Because like we said, didn't see him do any drills here. Brandon Beane talked about how they're going to take it slow with him this spring. Do we see him maybe take the next step in his progression, the next step in his health, maybe start to do a little bit more on-field things? Because I think in terms of ceiling in this draft class, Deon Walker has as high of a ceiling as anyone, just with his raw athleticism and the traits that he brings, the measurables that he brings to the table. And he was sort of injured in his last year at Kentucky, but the year before that, he was incredible, and I think he was only 19 years old in that season. So there's certainly a lot of untapped potential with Deon Walker. So I want to see him start to get onto the field, start to do things, and see what we kind of see from him.
I'll stay on the defensive line. I'll say the combinations. We're not set in starting lineups. Nothing is set in stone. But it also shows you maybe how up to speed guys like TJ Sanders and Landon Jackson are, who is present for the still voluntary portion of things. And I just want to kind of see the way they're already at least testing out who does Ed Oliver play next to. We've heard TJ Sanders. Where does that put Daquan Jones? Where does Landon Jackson fit? Is it going to be Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau? Is it AJ Epinesa? I mean, how are we going to kind of do this? Also, how are they handling in the lineup the two suspended guys as well? It's just an early thing you kind of, if you put in your notes and you go back once we're halfway through training camp and say this has been the progression, that's one thing. And then offensively, I want to see if James Cook is here. I'm not banking on it. I think he'll wait until the mandatory portion in mid-June, but it's just something to see. And if not, let's see if Ray Davis can maybe take a step forward with some opportunities given.
Well, especially because we thought, hey, maybe there's a chance the Bills draft a running back in this draft. No running backs taken, so it's James Cook, it's Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. If James Cook is not here, maybe some extra opportunities for Frank Gore Jr. in a training camp, which we saw him out here as well, a year with the Bills in the system, right? But something that I hadn't thought about, but it's a great point because, again, there is no guarantee that we do see James Cook once we're back here, even though Brandon Beane, when he's spoken, he's very confident that James Cook will play as a Buffalo Bill this season.
I am too. Also, I'll just throw in Elijah Moore because I loved him out of Old Miss. I still think he's an incredibly talented, fast, twitchy type of guy. Be curious to see it in T-shirt and shorts and stuff that made us think Chase Claypool could be an impactful player this time a year ago. With Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.